Thank you. So let me now properly welcome you to PMNCH's 28th board meeting and the second meeting of 2021. Can I acknowledge the partner governments which are attending today? India, Liberia, Mexico, Nigeria, and while the UK via Darren is here under the partners and funders and donors constituency, I think I should also single out the UK because it's been so incredibly helpful to us along with others. So with the governance reform now worked through fully, I think we've settled on a useful and constructive structure for the board itself and for the meetings. But of course, we should continue to learn from each meeting what went well, what didn't go so well, and we can fine-tune our approaches for the future so as to best achieve the objectives of the board. We've got 2.5 hours today and tomorrow, and it's for strategic dialogue about how we best combine all our strengths to advocate for the constituency we seek to serve. And our board is asked to provide ideas and direction, and we refer the operational discussions about how we actually carry out what we agreed to do to the executive committee. I think also at the start, can I say, could everyone, board members and especially invited guests, make sure your cameras are turned on and remind others, including observers and advisors, please turn yours off and your microphones off for the duration of the meeting. We've got quite a packed agenda, and so can I also say it's always helpful if interventions are short and succinct. So we're meeting obviously virtually again, reflecting the fact that the world is still in the grip of the pandemic. I don't have a crystal ball that functions to tell us how long we will continue to go through this, but as long as we do, and one fears beyond, the health and services for women, children and adolescents worldwide will continue to be compromised, and we will see the pre-existing gaps between haves and have-nots, including among women, children and adolescents themselves, continue to grow. We've spoken about this in previous meetings. The challenges are still with us, and I would say as we come towards the end of the second year of the pandemic are probably even more acute than before. So that's just a motivation, I think, for us all to work even harder to push back against the adverse consequences. We all know what they are, so I won't spell them out. But to say in summary, COVID-19 is often called a pandemic of inequalities as well as a pandemic of a virus. It's exposed bare for all to see society's fractures, but that just has to spur us on to use this once in a lifetime, really almost once in a century crisis as an opportunity to tackle head on injustices and inequities which were not properly addressed in the past in the interests of achieving better health and well-being for all. And in this context, what we do at PMNCH is very important. I think we've seen the results of our joined up efforts in this year lead to mobilizing commitments at scale and to making women, children and adolescent health explicit in so many COVID-19 recovery plans around the world. We've also been able to record more than $32 billion in resources pledged in alignment with our call to action on COVID-19, with as much as 60% of that coming from domestic resources. So we have to keep going. Many governments have pledged to prioritise women, children and adolescents in their response to recovery efforts, and PMNCH has worked with many stakeholders to encourage such commitments to be made and to be implemented, with the aim, of course, of trying to ensure that no one is left behind and that all of government responses address the challenges in a comprehensive and sustainable way. I think our call to action on COVID-19 has been successful in a lot of ways. Today and tomorrow, we've got a chance to build on those successes And we will consider today what other strategic advocacy priorities should be placed on the table to consider and how those would build on what we've done to date. And tomorrow we can turn to considering how we would implement them. Now, before we go any further, we have to go through the process of asking whether any board member taking part today has any perceived or known conflicts of interest with respect to any of the items on our agenda. If you do, they will be noted in the note for the record. And in general, and without limitation, conflicts are deemed to exist where a board member's or a board member representative's financial or interest is related to a decision by the board or any of its committees, and or where actions may create the perception that a board member or board member representative is using their role in PMNCH for personal benefit or for the direct financial benefit of anyone else. So if anyone wishes to disclose, now is your hour with a raised hand or a message to me in the box. If I don't see a reaction to that immediately, I will assume that we all have nothing to declare. So thank you. Now, before we go to approve the agenda, I want to take the opportunity to thank two of our colleagues who are stepping down from the board after this meeting. Lisa Hilmy from the core group and Angela Chowdhury from the Swasti Health Resource Centre are stepping down from their leadership positions at the NGO constituency at the end of the year. And so let's take this opportunity to express our gratitude to both for their long engagement with PMNCH's work and the board across many years and in many capacities. And Helga and technical team, I think we have a little video to share reflecting these sentiments. So we play it now. Well, a great video and many memories there. Under the leadership of Lisa and Angela, the NGO constituency has already begun a process to identify and agree on their replacements, and we would hope to have the full NGO constituency complement next time we meet as a board. I know Lisa is asking for the floor just to say a few words. Lisa, please come in with your mic on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It's a packed agenda, so I'll keep it brief. That was a lovely video. It's been a wonderful almost 5 to 6 years with the board in various roles, and had the pleasure to watch it go through many changes. It's fantastic, I think, where PMNCH is right now in terms of the new strategy, new ideas, and ways to engage the world over these really important issues for women, children, and adolescents. So just a heartfelt thank you to Helga. Oh my goodness, and your team are fabulous. Helen, you just amaze me every day. Flavia, I mean, all of you are just so amazing, and I am so grateful for this experience, and I hope we all stay in touch. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Lisa. And Angela, can you also come in, please?
Yes, thank you so much. I I'm at a loss of words. Thank you so much for that really emotional video. It's been a good 5 years. I'm so thrilled to see a lot of the things that we identified as problems, we found solutions for, and we're moving ahead so deliberately. At one point in time, I thought PMNCH was my only job, having been on so many committees and late night. But thank you so much, Helga, for your leadership and your incredible team. And Helen and the leaders who've pushed us. I'm so excited for the way forward, for the partnership engagement, for the broadening of the constituencies and the discussion, and of course the incredible and transformative agenda ahead. I've made great friends, so I will keep in touch, and good luck. And thank you for having me.
And thank you from the bottom of our hearts to you both. And we know while you won't be on the board, you'll still be with us in spirit and you'll still be out there advocating. So thank you so much. Right, our agenda, everyone's had a chance to review it, and it's been well worked through and reviewed by the Executive Committee as well to make sure that it's as focused and useful as possible to us all. So it's focused on in the following way. Day one, what are our strategic priorities for next year and beyond? And we are asked on day one to approve the Executive Committee's report to the board and to agree on the main strategic issues, needs and opportunities which will drive our advocacy priorities for 2022 and beyond. These have been identified through extensive member consultations and building on decisions and guidance from the July meeting. Tomorrow, when we meet, we'll look at the how do we approach these priorities. We'll be asked to approve the results framework and to agree on key approaches for pursuing our priorities. So can I take it that there is not objection to our agenda and its objectives as presented to you with proper notice? I don't see any hands, nothing in the conversation except nice messages about Lisa and Angela. So I'll assume that our agenda is approved. Just a word on the executive memo. We provided that again, as many have said that they find the document useful, and it's meant to support you in going through the agenda and all the items on it. Again, if you see ways to improve it, please let the Secretariat know, because we want it to be useful to you. Next item, we are asked to review and approve the note for the record from the most recent board meeting on the 30th of June. The decisions from that meeting were shared with the board at the meeting itself and then also the next day, and the full note for the record went out on the 15th of July. We have had no requests for any update or change to that from board members, and I'm told that all actions recorded in the note for the record have been delivered as set out in the monitoring of actions document. So unless there are any additional comments, and again I would look for hands or comments, I think we should move to approve these notes, adopt these notes, and acknowledge the follow-up work on the decisions. Thank you. Right, let me know. Have we got someone? No? Is someone seeking to come in? Because I'm not sure I see everyone. If not, right. Introduction to the Executive Committee report. Well, obviously a lot's been achieved in this last year. It's really been a year of learning and action in many ways. The governance reform approved December last year at the board's been put in place. And this meeting is the first time we can say at a board meeting that all of the new committees and working group structures are up and running, supporting the work of the board and bringing the voice of partners and constituencies to the heart of everything that we do. I understand that Helga has held a pre-board webinar for all PMNCH members, which detailed the progress on the governance reform and on the work plan, and that the webinar was very well attended and is available on our website. So the time has come to call in Darren. Darren Welsh Vice Chair of the Board, Chair of the Executive Committee, and Director of Global Health at the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, who's going to give us an overview of 2021 from the perspective of the Executive Committee. And as we listen to Darren, please remember we're asked to approve the Executive Committee's report and approve the proposed work plan structure. Let me hand over to you, Darren.
Thank you very much, Helen. I think we've got some slides which are going to magically appear on the screen. Here we go. I've just been reflecting, hearing about the Easter and Angela's moving on. Nobody ever really leaves the PMNCH family, do we? Might go on to other things, but it's such an important agenda and one that touches us, so we carry it with us. And that's really important to have those advocates going out into different areas of responsibility, but championing our work. So look, I won't, I try not at least to speak for very long, because Helga has already provided a wonderful webinar which I dialed into part of and which has gone through this in some detail, but I will try and give a quick overview of some of the main points. There are 4 areas. If we can skip to the next slide. 4 areas which I'll just briefly touch on as I go through this. And I say the detailed report has been presented in some but by Helga. It's also available on the website, so do take a look at it. Let's move on. So our work plan structure has been developed through an extensive consultation process with representatives from the 3 standing committees and the working groups. And that work plan for the coming period will be populated through further work, which is designed to then measure our intermediate outcomes, short-term outcomes, and our outputs. I think it's important for us to recognise that we also, through this process of developing the work plan and our governance, want to hold ourselves to account in the same way that we're so keen to hold others to account for delivery. We need to apply those same disciplines. And I think the work we've done over the last year around the results framework and the governance structures means we're in a much stronger place to be able to do that. You'll see on this slide, we've had a really strong year of continued growth. The partnership continues to take on new members, now over 1,200, up 17.5%. We've pushed through our governance reform, as I just mentioned. We're now more streamlined and effective and inclusive, and I'll come back to the inclusion point in a moment. We know that's something we need to continue to work on, and we've put a lot of effort into that over the last year, and we'll continue to do that. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's taken up new positions in the governance structures. I know it can be very time intensive, and we rely on all those inputs. So thank you so much for those people who've come forward. And some of this process has been and will continue to be iterative. And one of the areas we've worked through is the interaction between this board and the executive committee. Make sure we use both of those in the very best way that we can. I think it demonstrates we're a learning organisation, that we continue to challenge ourselves to learn and to adapt. And I'm sure we'll want to do more of that. And alongside the governance reform and the new membership, we have been strengthening the join up and the connections between our members, but also the advocacy that we do externally. And there's information here you see about the new interactive platforms which we've put in place. Let's move on. So PMNCH is owned and led by its members. It's only as good as we make it, and we're continuing to make it even better, which is the good news. And I'd say I'm really grateful to those who contribute time, skills, and knowledge. In these sorts of organisations, it's sometimes a bit easy to see the things that don't always go so well, but actually, we have a responsibility to make things better. And I've really been impressed by the way people have engaged in that spirit of constant improvement over the last year. Our members currently are in more than 60 leadership positions across the organisation, and of course we've got the full membership in the various structures, and we've worked really hard on bringing young people into the heart of our structures. We've got 20 young people in leadership positions now, as you'll see here on this diagram. And we've worked really hard to make sure that we are increasing the representation of young people. I think we've made good progress on that. We need to keep pushing forwards on that, but also on the rest of our diversity and inclusion agenda. We get so much energy from the contributions of our young people. Let's move on. So as we have a quick look back over some of the achievements and things we've learned, we're going to do that looking through the 3 areas of activity: our knowledge synthesis work, partner engagement, and of course campaigns and outreach. So we can move on. Now, we've generated some really powerful resources over the course of the last year, and of course before that as well, and there are some good examples of that here, also showing the levels of usage that those products are receiving. You'll be familiar with many of them, but you see that our resources and evidence on our digital platform access on average 7,000 times a month. I mean, that's really powerful. I think shows that there's real demand for what we are producing. The self-care animated videos during the C-19 crisis, really powerful. Again, I've watched those. I'm sure you will have done. Viewed more than 115 million times, and still counting. And it shows what demand there is for what we are able to produce. And of course, there was the action brief, which was launched during the high-level political forum over the summer. And there were some lessons here. You know, we've got these fantastic resources. How are we making sure that our members are aware of them and they're deploying them? And we're getting the very best return on the investment we've made in developing those resources. And our push into the digital space, you know, has shown real returns, and we need to continue to develop and build on that success. We move on to the next area. So we've obviously been supporting and facilitating our partner engagement, and we talked a bit about how we're doing that through digital technologies, but also through the impact of our champions. And we want to make sure we're bringing out the importance of national and regional leadership as well. And just on the champions point, you know, I think there's a moment for us just to pause and think about how we are facilitating the work of those champions as we move into the next year, how we're bringing in new ones where we feel we need to, and how we support Helen in the great work that she is doing in galvanizing political leadership in the context of the Global Leaders Network. I think there's a bit of thinking we owe ourselves to do around that. And we've learned that obviously members are central to everything we do. Empowering and supporting our members does create real change. And the more that we enable our members to interact and engage in PMNCH, the greater the impact we are able to have. And then the third area, and in some senses perhaps the most important, how have we mobilized action and secured those policy commitments that we've wanted? And it's been an extremely busy and successful year, I would say. In that respect, we have had enormous media reach. Those numbers are truly incredible, actually. We have managed very successful e-summits, which have secured commitments from governments and other partners as well. And it's been very busy on that front, and we've enlisted champions, an increasing number and more interaction from our champions as well, speaking out on our issues throughout those events. There's been some lessons we've learned. Virtual event fatigue. I think this is, and I sit in a lot of virtual events. I expect many of you do as well. And I have to say, my appetite for sitting and listening to more and more pre-records is diminishing. And I think, you know, as we go into next year, there's a challenge both for us, but for the broader international community. And how do we innovate and refresh and make those virtual events things that people really do want to take part in, and they don't feel that they're seeing a series of pre-recorded messages with no interaction and spark and engagement and debate amongst the participants. Challenge for us all, I think. And then we've referred here to the need for greater use of regional languages to ensure we're getting that depth of engagement as well as breadth of engagement that we are looking for. So if we move on, as we look forward to next year, we've got a results framework and work plan structure, which we'll be discussing in detail tomorrow when representatives from the results framework working group, and huge thanks to them, will tell us about what they've been doing to take that work forwards. I think we can move on a little bit about how the executive committee will be taking our work next year forward. So some things are really strong and they're going to remain the same. So we'll continue to be strongly member-led, engaging our members, listening to our members, seeing how we can serve them better and magnify their efforts. We will continue to organise our work around our three functional areas. That will stay the same, but there'll be some things we want to think more about. One of those will be updating our theory of change with national, regional and global commitments. And then we'll want to develop a detailed annual work plan that will come out early in the new year, showing what we're going to deliver and when, and as I say, providing a framework for holding ourselves to account and prioritising our efforts. Then we can move on. But of course, you need money, you need some resources to do all of this. We've got the essential budget, sort of the core of what we think we need to be in business, of about $10 million, but we could go up to 15. There's scope and room to do even more and to push up to 15 for a more comprehensive level of activities if those resources were made available. And we've got a tentative equal breakdown of budget by functional area. I'd be very interested to hear views on this, but we've basically gone for a three-way split between the three areas. And then the next stage is to develop those into more concrete budgets. As we develop the work plan and we have an idea of costing of activities, we'll produce something which is a bit more detailed for consideration. So let's move forwards on to and still on the subject of budgets, but let me go one more. There you go. So we've had, if you look at the second point here, our finances haven't been immune to the pandemic. There have been some challenges in meeting the full budget that we had set ourselves. There's still a small gap this year. We fell a bit short, but everything we've received, we've used, and we've put to fantastic use, as we demonstrated earlier, to some of the results that we have delivered. So the team have done a great job of mobilising the resources that we've been given. For next year, there remains still a gap. We have secured, as you see, 5.2 million, and there's another 2.2 million which is under consideration. I'm hoping to be able to confirm positive news about the UK's position more formally shortly. But I know others are also seeing how they can make a contribution. And I think what the money is used on is well shown, but we're going to need some help, I think, in a final push to get ourselves up to the numbers we'd like to see. So if you move to the next slide, as I say, we can see we've had some success in resource mobilisation. There are 9 donors there, 6 governments, 2 private foundations, and a multilateral initiative. We have secured 18 million in new multi-year grants. That includes the one I mentioned from the UK, but Germany, India, Norway, Spain have been able to contribute. Thank you so much for that. The Botnar Foundation been extraordinarily generous. Thank you, Flavia, and for all the support Botnar's been able to give us, and Gavi too. And I really mean that. A huge thank you to all of those who've been able to mobilise resources and for the generosity that they've shown the partnerships. And we're going to need a bit more support. As I said, we're not quite there yet, and discussions are continuing with another range of important partnerships. So we're going to be looking for your help on that, your support on this important work to raise the resources we need to deliver that ambitious set of objectives that we've got. So I won't say much more than that, just a couple of final things. That there are some formal decisions on which we are seeking board approval. Obviously, Helga, I'll invite you to flag anything I have omitted, should have said, or anything I have, correct anything I've said and shouldn't have said. So do please feel free to come in just a moment. Then I think we'd welcome comments and reflections. And just a small plug for something we will be doing in the UK next week, if I may, which is launching our own new action plan on ending preventable deaths, which will have women's, children's and adolescent health right at the heart of it, and also a plan for how we will work with our partners around the world to build stronger health systems. And the pandemic has shown us how very much we need that. So I will send some more information around about that, but we see that in the context of our support for PMNCH and an important UK contribution to the policy and the programming work over the next year. And I'm looking forward enormously actually to working with everyone on a very exciting period ahead. But I'll stop there. Thank you. Helga, anything you wanted to comment on?
No, thank you. Say that thank you very much for that, and also thank you for all the board members that have been helping throughout the year. It has been a busy year. I look forward to actually next year because we built the governance reform and we've tried to put all the vision that you approved last year at the board meeting into action this year for actually start delivering it through the governance structures next year. So it has been a tough year, and I would like to thank all of my team for immense efforts, the virtual situation. And I just would like to quickly share with you that we are Omicron positive in this house. We have been, our daughter has been tested and positive, and we most probably have it all of us too. So this is our reality, but it keeps very true to being very loud about the effect on women, children, and adolescents. So this is the spirit that we move forward to. Thank you from my side. Over to you, Helen.
Can I just say, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure we'll join with everyone in sending best wishes to you and the family, and to say what an amazing job you and the whole team have done over the last year. What a pleasure it was to meet with some of them in person in Geneva when I was there recently. I managed to travel just before the shutters seem to have come down once again, but hopefully we'll be able to travel in the not too distant future and meet again in person. It'd be great. Sorry, Helen, over to you.
Thanks, Darren and Helga. And Helga, I hope when we've finished the meeting, you'll go to bed with a warm hot water bottle or something, and look after yourself. Thanks. Well, thanks, Darren. That was a great report, and there was just some amazing uptake there on some of the products. I mean, I wrote down, the video series accessed 115 million times. I mean, this is something amazing for a small secretariat managing on a budget of that reached 8.2 million for the year. So really, phenomenal impact, I would think, and value for money. And let me also add my thanks on behalf of the board to all the donors who've made the work possible. We've had incredible support from both of our vice chair governments, India and the UK. And I know Lars will be online, and really want him to receive the thanks to the government of Norway. Fondation Botnar has become a very important supporter. Thank you, Flavia and Thiago. Please thank Anaradna and Gavi and Anne. The Gates Foundation has been fantastic for a long time. Thank you. And Helga, please thank the donors who aren't sitting on the board meeting today for all that they have done. And let me just underline, Darren's call. We all need to work together to support the Secretariat as it reaches out for these very important funding partnerships. As without funding, you can't do the incredible work that's being done. Just one last note from me on the governance reform, to thank Flavia as Chair of Governance and Ethics Committee, and all the committee for the incredible efforts they made to ensure we had all of this in place. So the floor is open for comments and suggestions on the comprehensive executive committee report. And can I also say that apart from you obviously having relevant documents, Helga gave a full presentation in the pre-board meeting, and I understand there's a longer version of the presentation we've just seen that's also available online. Floor is open. Now, if I can't see you on screen, because I can only see about, I don't know, 15 people, I will look for the chat box for you to indicate that you would like to speak. So either hands raised on the screen, or please let me know in the chat button. Or you could wave wildly in the hope that I might might have you on screen. So anyone like to come in with any comments or advice on the executive committee report? I see. So I'm calling board members only, Helga, is that correct?
Yeah, but we have maybe Government of India, and I'd like to also to thank them for their enormous support and contribution. And then we have Liberia, Helen.
Thank you. Right, let me call in the Government of India first, followed by Liberia. Please come in.
Thank you, Helen, and a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are, to all the fellow members of the board. This is my first meeting with almost all of you. I am Vikas Sheel, and I am heading the National Health Mission in India, which is the flagship program for ensuring comprehensive primary health care and also providing referral linkages for tertiary care. And this is the primary vehicle of the Government of India for achieving the Sustainable Development Goal 3, including for maternal, child health and adolescent health. It is my pleasure to be here with you. Please do accept apologies on behalf of Mr. Rajesh Bhushan, Secretary Health and Family Welfare, who is traveling with the Honorable Prime Minister. He sends his best wishes for a very successful board meeting and has also promised to be with us tomorrow. Thank you, Darren, for a very thorough presentation. Congratulations to the PMNCH for accomplishments mentioned in the presentation. On behalf of Government of India, I endorse the Executive Committee's progress report and the proposed work plan structure and a broad breakdown of the budget for 2020-22. It is good to see the emphasis on the lessons learned in the process. It reflects well that what Helen said in her opening remarks, that PMNCH is a learning organization. However, it would be good to understand how these lessons have been learned and how the recommendations will be operationalized going forward. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much, and thank you, India, for your constant and large support. It's much appreciated. Governor of Liberia, please come in, and you'll be followed by Flavia and then by Anshu from WHO. Liberia, please. Is Liberia coming in? I can't hear, so until I do, I'll move to Flavia. Thank you, Flavia.
Thank you very much, Helen, and thanks so much, Darren, for the presentation. I have 3 points I wanted to raise. Number one, as a thank you back for all the inputs that all the board members and partners in PMNCH have given to the governance reform. I wanted to inform that in the spirit that you have identified, Darren, we are constantly improving, and we are planning what we call a light touch assessment in 2022, most likely in the second part of 2022, to see what are we learning from this governance reform. And we still have some small things that are not quite complete. One particular I like to mention, which is the appointment of a young vice chair under 30 years of age. That's the last part in our effort to really have leadership of young people at each different stage of PMNCH. With my hat as a donor, Helen, we at the Fondation Bodnar continue to be very excited to work with PMNCH. We are especially excited of the Adolescent Health and Well-Being portfolio, but also all the other efforts that PMNCH has made to continue have visibility of women, children, and adolescent health in this current difficult panorama. We are planning together with the Secretariat to have a meeting of the Swiss foundations in the first part of next year. And I wanted to raise this so that maybe we can think together and join hands with other donors and players. Who else do we need to reach out that can contribute and support this effort? As Darren, you have said in the chat, is a very valuable and value for money, but we need to get others so excited. And then the final point, which is a question for us all and also for the executive committee, is that clearly we are learning lessons about the modality of working with each other virtual, which also highlights some of the virtual divide and the possibility that we have to be connected equally without discrimination, or especially of people that have less access to internet, and especially I'm thinking the young people. So I wanted to ask, is there something more that we can do on that? Is there something, some lessons that other organizations have learned in that we can look for? Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavia, and be interested to hear whether others have thoughts on that digital gap and how we could try to overcome it. Anshu from WHO, and then followed by Martin from IPU. Anshu.
Thank you very much, Helen. And I just wanted to, because I didn't know where on the agenda this would fit, so raise one issue, and that was really around the governance reform that was taken forward, and that was that the board would be more strategic and the EC would be delegated really its implementation, let's say. Between the last board and this board meeting, we had one EC meeting, which was very much more an update to the EC, and I think we did not really have enough time to discuss the recommendations from the board the last time. And thank you, Darren, for sending out an invite for next week, but it's a very short 30-minute one. And so I wonder whether we'll have enough time to reflect really on the recommendations coming out of this board. So there's just one thing I wanted to reflect on how we could maybe look at that and take that forward. Just on the results framework, I have no problems with it. I just was looking at the budget. I know that most likely because it has not been budgeted yet into detail, but I felt that the 1/3 of its allocation to the knowledge component was quite large compared to, let's say, the advocacy component and how to take advocacy forward, etc. So that was just my only comment on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Anshu. I think a couple of points there for Executive Committee to pick up on. Martin, please come in.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helen. Thank you to Darren too. Having participated in the deliberations of the Executive Committee, I can identify very much with that report. And I just wanted to highlight the importance of political mobilization. I think it's reflected in that report. Of course, we do political mobilization, all of us at the global level, but increasingly I think it's important to go where it really matters at the national level. And so the IPU has been very pleased to work with PMNCH to mobilize speakers of parliament on behalf of the call to action. And I do understand that several hearings have been held at national level to canvass support for the call to action on COVID. I look forward to taking this work a step further next year. And I believe when we start discussing the priorities for 2022, I would like to make that point again, that a lot of our efforts in terms of partner engagement and outreach should be focused at those partners at national level who have the ability to make things happen there. And offer that parliaments and parliamentarians should be in the picture. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you for making your networks available for this work. It's much appreciated. I see a message from Anshu to say that I think the minister from Nigeria would like to speak. So if that's the case, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. I am representing the Honorable Minister of Tanzania. He wanted to be in this meeting at the last moment. Unfortunately, a lot is happening today in the country. We are having a COVID summit as well. So he has asked me to represent him and also to extend his greetings to all of you, and to appreciate all the efforts that you are putting in towards improving the health and well-being of women and children globally, especially in Nigeria. For us in Nigeria, he has asked me to extend that it's a very difficult period for us, battling with the COVID pandemic, as well as the insecurity situation in the country, which has escalated so much in the last. So he appreciates all the support, and he has reviewed the strategy, and he's fully in line and has endorsed that strategy also for implementation in Nigeria, which is fully aligns with our focus in the country and with the government of India, and also positioning to ensure focus on adolescent health and young people in the country, because adolescents are a very important portion of the population, and more so 40% of deaths occurs among adolescent mothers. So these efforts have been recently in terms of refocusing for more support for adolescent women and girls in Nigeria. Part of it is the commitment for family planning. Despite the COVID pandemic, the Nigerian government also continued to commit for the procurement of permanent services. This year, the commitment is also being made by the Minister of Finance. The Honorable Minister has also asked me from you that he has established a more effective coordination in the care of the elderly to ensure the well-being of women, girls, and adolescents in the country, which we call the Multi-Stakeholder Coordination Platform, RAMCA, the acronym. And this has been launched at the national level since last year. And our work continued to be trying to step down at the sub-national. So states at the sub-national level are adopting the multi-stakeholder coordination platform. And this is currently yielding results because it brings all key players on board, not only health sector, but also other sectors like the Ministry of Women Affairs, and also our institutions who are the champions in terms of advocating for family planning commodities and also promoting the health and well-being of Nigeria. So recently also in my interest to note also that Nigeria is also struggling with a rise or increase in gender-based violence. We begin to see more and more of this happening, and more probably due to improving surveillance system or as a result of the effect of pandemic, but reports on that. And the government established a collaborative committee at the highest level, which is anchored on that, have come up with strategies. So on the Ministry of Health, the Gender Health and Policy, we've also come up with guidelines to support health workers on the clinical management of gender-based violence. So a lot of activities are going on in collaboration with the Ministry of Women Affairs and also with the Ministry of Youth and Sports, in trying to see how we can Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for keeping it real from Nigeria and reporting on from
Hello,
the ground.
can you hear me?
We can't hear you very clearly. You faded a wee bit there at the end. So maybe, yeah,
So
maybe we.
Most of my camera.
I think it has faded quite a lot. So let's thank Nigeria. I see that Liberia is endeavoring to come back in. So please come back in, Bento.
Camera to improve the sound.
Yeah, I think we may have to stop there with Nigeria because the sound has just faded. But Bento, can you come in from Liberia, please? Please bring sound on. Again, we seem to have a sound problem. So without sound, we can't proceed with the interventions, unfortunately. But thank you for all who've contributed. I don't hear objection to the report and the broad outline of the work plan structure. Helga, you wanted to come in briefly on a point that Anshu made, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just for all the board members to know that the decisions and the guidance from the former board meeting we have taken with us to all of the committees and working groups, and the ideas, and we have also embedded them in your next agenda item discussion, which we are going to soonly embark on. The idea also, in line with the governance reform, is to get directions from the board in order to then the committees to take them and operationalize them in work plan and budget thinking, and for this to then be taken into more detail by the EC in accordance to their mandate in February. So several of the working groups and standing committees have already scheduled working plan sessions, retreats coming January and a little beginning in February. So that is very much the idea. Just to note, and this is one of the lessons learned, that most of the committees started really coming together on the last quarter of this year. So this is a reflection of that the process, although it has been a very good process and a transparent one and a comprehensive and also very integrating one, has taken time. So that is one. The other is we will not actually see the budget breakdown before the results of the work from the working groups and the committees. And so then we will come back with a readjustment of the breakdown of the budget. So for now, without that, we could have put tentatively something else, but that would have been just as wrong as what this is. So please, the EC will then bear in mind, and maybe the decision point here could be that when you don't agree the breakdown of the budget in this way, but that a more finer tuning and budget breakdown will be actually then sent to the EC. But our hope is to be able to fundraise for 10 million, which is the essential budget line, and 15, which is the comprehensive. Over from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Helga. Can I give Bento from Liberia one last chance to come in to see if we can hear you? Can you come in?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are very sorry that it have to happen this way, but the minister actually wants me to please extend her thanks and appreciation and apology for running out of this emergency. Just from the first section, she actually has said she's pleased about the progress, especially for the presentation. But looking as we move forward with implementation of the PMNCH result framework, and to see more of the sources at the national level, and hear about challenges and how we can address them. She also would like to hear if it would be possible to systematically provide a platform for commitment making partner governments to share the challenges being faced and express the need as to how partner support can be mobilized in a more coherent manner at the national level. And more importantly, she will really look forward to having progress made in other countries share, and that will also be a lesson learned and help us to also see how we take on that. So at the moment, opportunities are made available on an ad hoc basis, and she thinks it can be more coherent. In Liberia as well, we know that you have the statistics as well that we have very young population. So among health priority, adolescent health is key. And so we're doing everything possible to make sure. So if we can have the sharing of sources on a platform where we can all work towards learning from one another at the country level. And so just on this note, because we are just being given a little opportunity, we just hope that the rest of the meeting, we will continue on the meeting and be able to participate the best way we can. Thank you so much for giving us this time.
Thank you so much. Darren, can I bring you back in from Executive Committee?
Thanks, Helen, and really interesting to hear the contributions from partners. So thank you for that. I really like the idea that we've just heard from Liberia. Actually, we'll give that some thought. Look, I think Helga said it, how we're going to take forward the work. I think, and Andrew makes good points, and it's not the first time that he's raised these issues, and it's welcome. So thank you, Andrew. I think the truth is we're still bedding in quite how all of these bodies interact, and to do keep the feedback coming. I think the reason for the half-hour check-in before Christmas was partly just because everyone's diary is so crazy busy. But we did want to just take stock of where we got to in this meeting and make sure there's at least agreement on what the key messages are as we then go into the planning stage early next year. But that's not meant to be sort of a substitute for a deeper discussion, which we will need to have. On your point about the distribution across the budget across the various areas, I thought that was also useful, but that's precisely the kind of steer we're looking for. That's what we need the board to do, to say to us, actually, we think we need a bit more of this and a bit less of that, or where we want you to focus the partnership activities in this area, and then we can go away and we can do the work and come up with a plan and a proposal. But that's the sort of steer that we could really do with. And then finally, Flavia, I think, an offer there. So if you're convening your Swiss foundations, who we know have got deep pockets, so we are hopeful of a positive discussion. But if there's any way that we can support, if it's helpful to have donors come along and say, this is the value we see in the partnership, or maybe some of the partner governments to come along and talk about their experiences, then I'm sure we'd be happy to lean in and support you in that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Darren. And I take it from what we've heard that we can now note and approve the Executive Committee's report and the broad outlines of the work plan structure, all subject to ongoing work that the standing committees and working groups will take forward early next year as they develop the more detailed work plan. So we're now coming to item 3 on the agenda, a very important item, reflecting on the strategic advocacy priorities and providing direction going forward. We're being asked to familiarise ourselves with strategic advocacy topics coming to the fore this past year, and Anne Stars, co-chair of the Strategic Advocacy Committee, is going to summarise these. And we're asked to make decisions on the strategic priorities for 2022 and beyond that we should be focusing on. I understand there's been quite a lot of discussion in various fora around this. So can I first ask Vikas Sheel, Additional Secretary and Mission Director for National Health Mission, and speaking on behalf of Rajesh, our Vice Chair and Secretary of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare of the Government of India, who couldn't be with us today, to provide a short introduction to the item, and then I will pass the floor to Anne. So Vikash, please come in.
Thank you, Helen, for your excellent chairwomanship. PMNCH's partner-led model is a strong reminder of how much can be achieved through multi-stakeholder partnerships, and this makes PMNCH board meetings even more special. On behalf of the Government of India, I want to congratulate the partnership for its accomplishments in 2021 in what has been, as Helen described, truly an extraordinary year. Thank you, Helen, for your kind acknowledgement of India's strong support for PMNCH, which we remain committed to going forward, given that women, children, and adolescents are a priority population group in India's sustainable development agenda. Our continued support to PMNCH reflects our appreciation for the impact of the partnership and our commitment to it. From a partner government's perspective, I agree with friends and colleagues that PMNCH's work is more critical now than ever before to strategically and strongly advocate for inclusive, equitable, and dexterous national responses that keep the most vulnerable populations, with the women, children, and the adolescents, at the heart of all policy, financing, and service delivery considerations. The Government of India has kept this fundamental principle in mind to maintain essential RMNCH nutrition services, and the same has been reflected in our commitment to the PMNCH's call to action on COVID-19. We remain committed to this approach. Now that PMNCH's governance reform has been completed and all the standing committees and working groups are operational, it is an opportune moment for us to reflect strategically on what WCAH issues should we put our collective weight behind. We will provide steer on the following question. What are our strategic advocacy priorities for 2022 and beyond? In doing so, we should be mindful of the following 4 issues. First, the challenging context that we face. Second, the PMNCH 2021-25 strategy. Third, the PMNCH call to action on COVID-19, which is the flagship campaign at the moment. And fourth, the reality of finite resources. It is also extremely important that our responses speak to the final proposal of the results framework, since it clarifies both what we are seeking to do as PMNCH partners to achieve up to 30 new financing, policy, or service delivery commitments from low and middle income countries by 2025, as well as 5 commitments from global and regional bodies. It also clarifies how we will do this by strengthening partner capacities to mobilize these commitments and hold governments accountable through increased knowledge, partner engagement, and campaigns. We will discuss the results framework and the 2022-25 work plan in detail tomorrow. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the consultative process through which the results framework has been developed and future advocacy priorities identified. As Helen pointed out, Ann Stars will now be making a presentation on the 5 strategic advocacy priorities of our decision, based on the collective recommendations of the standing committees, working groups, and the constituencies that have collectively recommended these priorities. I look forward to a fruitful deliberation. Over to you back, Helen.
Thank you very much, Vikas. And let's move right along to Anne to outline the proposed priorities that have come out of months of member engagement. Anne, over to you to frame our discussion.
Great. Thank you very much, Helen and Vikesh. Appreciate the introduction. So we have 4 slides to share with the group. Thank you, Julia, for putting them up. That represent the outcomes of the discussions that have been held. I am presenting on behalf of the Strategic Advocacy Committee, which I co-chair, along with Gitinji Gitahi, who I believe I see his name on the list. I know he wasn't. He was going to be in and out today, so I'm not sure if he's with us at the moment. But appreciation to him and to all the members of the Strategic Advocacy Committee. What I'm about to present, as has been noted, is a result of a series of consultations which have been held with the PMNCH committees, the working groups, and the constituencies. It reflects the input we've received to date from the online survey of members about advocacy needs and priorities. So if any of you or any of your organizations have not yet completed the survey, this is a pitch to weigh in at that point, because the more input we get, the better it is. So specifically, what I'm about to present includes inputs from the Partner Engagement in Countries Committee, PEC, as well as the Knowledge and Evidence Working Group and the Accountability Working Group. So our focus in terms of what we're going to present today is primarily on the what. So what are the advocacy goals and the advocacy priorities that we want to focus on for 2022 and potentially beyond? We haven't leaned in explicitly on the how, what exactly, or how PMNCH will execute on these advocacy priorities. That will be the focus of the 2022 work planning process, and the Strategic Advocacy Committee will be hosting a planning retreat with key members of the other committees and working groups early in the year, in February. Having said that, of course, some reference to the how is an important input into defining the key advocacy priorities. So some of this how is because this how is so intertwined with PMNCH's comparative advantage and our uniqueness. So I will present in the next slide the key advocacy priorities that we have, goals that we have identified. But we will also share a sense of how we see our top advocacy goals in relation to different types of commitments, the financing policy and service delivery, and how each of these goals can be approached through specific advocacy products and processes. Okay, Julia, go ahead to the next slide now. Thank you. So this slide represents and shows the 7 key elements, the 7 key asks of the PMNCH call to action on COVID-19. So just as a quick reminder, this agenda was endorsed and launched by the PMNCH board meeting in July of 2020. And as has been noted in the earlier discussion today, this call to action campaign has been our leading activity, our leading campaign over these past 18 months. And has been associated with announcements of commitments from more than 20 countries totaling $32 billion US. So the campaign unites the demand from all PMNCH partners and constituencies for an urgent and measurable government-led investments, policies, and service delivery commitments to address the damage that this pandemic has had on women, children, and adolescents, and to promote the recovery and resilience agenda. So the 7 asks of the campaign cut across our 3 main PMNCH goal areas of sexual and reproductive health and rights, SRHR, MNCH, maternal newborn child health, including stillbirths, and adolescent health and well-being, as well as supporting UHC for improved equity for women, children, and adolescents. So if we go to the next slide, this shows our 4 key recommendations that have emerged from the discussions that have been held over the past weeks. So the first recommendation is to maintain our support for the COVID-19 call to action, which this emerged as a priority from every one of the sources we consulted, every one of the committees, working groups, and the survey. Most of the sources suggested focusing on the first 3 asks of the call to action, but there was also a strong recommendation that we not lose that broader framing of the full call to action, especially in terms of our work with other key health partnerships and key stakeholders. So the second recommendation also links back to the framing of COVID, that sort of build back better message, while also linking our core mandate to the UHC and PHC mandate that is a fundamental organizing principle for the global health work that we're all part of. I think the key risk for our movement as countries struggle to rebuild and restructure health systems during COVID and hopefully following COVID at some point is that women's, children's, and adolescents' health, or key components of it, risk being left out. So ensuring the full inclusion of our agenda within primary health care, within PHC, UHC, is fundamental to PMNCH's vision and mandate. So you see that reflected in that second recommendation, with a specific subfocus on improving equity and access and focusing on vulnerable and marginalized groups. The third recommendation is for strong support for continuing PMNCH's focus on adolescent health and well-being. This emerged from most of our sources. There was also a call for a focus on from a couple of sources on planetary health and mental health, which we heard especially strongly from our adolescent and youth constituency. So as such, the Strategic Advocacy Committee recommendation is to encourage and support that adolescent and youth constituency give voice to those key elements, the planetary health and the mental health, and that continue to lead the call to action, the work around that specific element of the agenda. The fourth recommendation reflects the theme that we've been hearing for some time, which is that we should not, as PMNCH, move away from a focus on that MDG unfinished agenda, the MDG 4 and 5, for those of you who have been around for this period of time, that were in fact the founding focus, the founding mandate of PMNCH, so maternal, newborn, and child mortality and morbidity. So for 2022, our recommendation is to focus this work on products and processes that are planned or underway, specifically new estimates that will be coming out on preterm birth, low birth weight, that will be released in 2022, as well as efforts to align and bring together the Ending Preventable Maternal Mortality and Every Newborn Action Plan, along with as part of the Aligned MNH initiative. So as I mentioned at the beginning, for all of these advocacy goals, the Strategic Advocacy Committee is recommending that we sort of overlay our thinking and our discussions when we get to the specifics of the how, in relation to our specifics asked in relation to the financing policy and service delivery framework. So the next and last slide gives some examples of what this might look like, what these 4 elements of our recommended strategic goals might look like across our 3 areas of action: the knowledge and evidence, the partner engagement, and the campaigns and outreach. So there have been a range of products and approaches that have been discussed in some of these working groups and committees. I'm not going to go through every box on this table, just wanted to highlight a few suggestions here to illustrate how partners could take forward these goals through these 3 main functions. And this will be the subject of the breakout groups tomorrow. So we can certainly have some discussion on this today, but just wanted to reassure people that given our relatively short agenda, the relatively short time we have for this agenda today, that we will have more additional time tomorrow. So these functions, which are highlighted in the PMNCH 2021-2025 strategy, are of course interdependent. We need all 3 to come together in order to result in effective advocacy. So it's not evidence alone that will produce results, but how we use this evidence in our campaigns and how we engage and support partners to mobilize commitments and accountability for that process. So if we look at some of the examples, if we look at women's and children's and adolescents health within UHC-PHC, there's a proposal from the Knowledge and Evidence Working Group to produce a global investment framework with country investment cases to drive more and more focused and stronger investments for WCAH. Updated financing evidence is important. For example, the costing of packages of effective interventions and the estimated return on investments, including in relation to adolescent health, can help drive the case for PHC and UHC and specifically a focus on WCAH within those movements, especially in the current context of building back better in hopefully when we get there, the post-COVID world. However, the technical work process of engaging partners, building consensus, including young people and community members, as well as parliamentarians and other global platforms beyond PMNCH, is critical to how the results of this work will be lifted up, will be made visible, and will be instrumental to mobilizing the concrete financing and policy commitments by countries. So we will need to include in this working through the high-level champions and political platforms like G7 and G20. So the advocacy vision that we're looking for, which will be based on reflect a blend of campaign strategy, of partner engagement, and knowledge and evidence, is what we're driving to with these advocacy goals. So let me stop there. I look forward to hearing the comments. And again, a thanks to all of the members and constituencies and committees and working groups of PMNCH for their really valuable input. It was great to see a strong consensus that emerged from the deliberations of these groups that we've been able to summarize in this presentation today. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Anne, and a lot to digest there, but very clearly set out, and thank you so much for that. Now, what we were going to do was just sort of all kind of look at the screen so that a group photo can be taken to the extent that we can on this Teams format. And then when we've done that, we're giving you a sort of 5-minute comfort break, and then we're going to come back for inputs from board members into the report that we've had. So Helga, I assume that somebody is going to be going click, 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 and we will all sort of grin or grimace, whatever you feel like, while the photo is taken. So we'll count to 3 and expect it to be done. And suddenly I can see many more people on the screen, so something positive happened from taking the photo. Right, technical team, are we done and dusted with the photo? I hope so. Right, it's 25 minutes past the hour. Let's come back at 1:30 when you've filled your coffee cup and whatever, and we'll carry on with the discussion. Thanks, see you in 5 minutes. Right. Well, for all of you who are sitting in your seats, you've had the trailer and we're now going to run the full movie. And the full movie is that we're seeking discussion and feedback now on the very interesting proposal which Anne set out to us. And remember, she identified from the consultations that there was a call to keep the call to action as a big focus, and particularly to focus on aspects within that, to increase the focus on building back better and also linking our agenda to UHC and PHC, to focus on adolescent well-being, and to have a fourth area, which is to focus on maternal, newborn, and stillbirth. And then Anne had it presented across the pillars of knowledge and evidence, partner engagement, and can't even read my own notes now, but nicely set out in a matrix as to what we would actually do in each of those areas. So, who would like to raise hands to come in on this? Anshu asks, could Anne's presentation be shared by email so we can comment? I don't think it's on the website. So maybe technical team can get a link to that. So
we'll make it available on the chat, Helen.
Yeah. Right. So I'm calling in board members, Helga, and I think I should call in Annika from UNFPA. Annika.
Thank you. And thank you, Anne, for the presentation. And I think that I totally agree with the priorities. My only comment here would be that when I look at the matrix and how we engage and different events, etc., I think there could be more ways of engagement in the different areas of advocacy. But I also think that it's always difficult when you put it in a table, right? Because it's more circular than that. I think that all the advocacy priorities actually speak to one another. And so when we look at the engagement on the first one, on COVID, all the others fit in there as well. So I think, yes, to find a way to see how they are interconnected would be valuable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I call in Carla from Mexico, partner government? Carla.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's really wonderful to be back at this PMNCH meeting and realize so much has been also going on with this online format. So congratulations to all for putting this together. And also thank you, Anne, for presenting the summary on the advocacy priorities. I think that from the Mexico government, we would like to highlight in this framework of the commitments that were made towards the call to action on COVID-19, some of the asks that we feel remain very relevant to date. And I would like to highlight asks 1, 2, 3, and 7, because these will continue to be relevant in the foreseeable future. And we do encourage PMNCH through this board to continue to strongly advocate for minimizing disruptions in this essential sexual, reproductive, maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health services. As we see, these are crucial and have been strongly affected by the pandemic, but also preventing and mitigating gender-based violence and strengthening the role of professional midwives and nurses in the continuum of women's healthcare, as we do see these are crucial in terms of keeping the agenda to date. Just to highlight some of these effects and why we highlight these asks, routine SRMNCH service provision and utilization has been very adversely affected in our country. Prenatal care visits during this year saw a dramatic decline with missed opportunities for screening and preventive strategies. And just to show you how strong the impact has been, is that our rise in maternal deaths has been dramatic. To date, 45% of maternal deaths are due to COVID. And with preliminary data, our maternal mortality rate for 2020 has risen 60% when compared to our 2019 data. We have also seen evidence of the increase in gender-based violence, and we are just beginning to witness the effects as girls are arriving to our health services with unwanted late pregnancies from rape. Despite our emphasis on the role of nurses and midwives in mitigating this impact, our state-level governments continue to rely on OBGYNs and GPs for provision of maternal and newborn care, despite our national guidelines, which have been reviewed and updated in line to the vast body of knowledge that indicates this investment in midwives is a cost-effective strategy. So we have also made commitments towards the call to action for adolescents and see the social and economic consequences of the pandemic on young people are going to be profound. We have diagnosed through surveys the serious mental health and well-being challenges for adolescents. School closures in our country lasted more than a year and a half, and this and the effects on mental health will have very high implications for the future of our country. And lastly, the financial and human resources for health continue to suffer from the effects of COVID, and the health system will continue to struggle for years. So I therefore urge our PMNCH partners to advocate strategically for these issues so that they are elevated, and not only in national, but also subnational discourses, and of course with strategies that are tailored at the different global regions, including Latin America and the Caribbean. So thank you very, very much. This will be all.
Thank you, and obviously, very, very shocking information to see maternal mortality up so steeply over the previous year. Very, very sobering indeed. Thank you, Carla. I think, as you mentioned, midwives, I should bring Franca in immediately. Franca.
Thank you so much, and nice to see you all. And thank you, Anne, for the presentation. And I think it's really nice and summarized and short. And then one of the things that happens is that the things that are not there, you see those as well. And I'm so aware of that, because of course you want to keep it short. And then you look at what's not there, but a lot is there. And I really agree with the 4 priorities. What I do notice is that the last, the 4th priority, is framed in a different way. The other ones are framed more positively. And I would say that, especially because PMNCH is about advocacy, framing is extremely important. We're going towards a paradigm shift. And so I think we need to look towards increasing optimal care, because I think this way of framing preventable maternal death and neonatal death is that same framing that we've always had. And it has some side effects as well, which we've also kind of been running into. And as I think Carla and Annika have said, especially if we look at low birth weight, preterm birth, we do need to look at other issues, such as, for example, the State of the World Midwifery Report, the impact of midwives that have impact specifically on these 2 issues. And I think we need to take that along within this area. And I do also agree that all of these areas overlap. But we, of course, know that. But I do think that it's important, especially to look at the framing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Franca. Can I bring in Errol, the head of HCPA constituency?
Thank you so much, and that was an excellent presentation. But let's not diminish number 4. With the COVID epidemic, we've really gone backwards, and yet we know what needs to be done. Franca spoke eloquently about the need for more midwives. We need more nurses, so our manpower shortage. The other thing I would just remind you, we're seeing more forced marriages. We're seeing more problems. The point of entry so many times is that first pregnancy, and that helps establish the rapport for midwives and other people providing the primary care. We have many partnerships, ENAP being one of them, but I don't want to see us de-emphasize that. I think number 4 needs to be emphasize because we're heading in the wrong direction at this point.
Thank you, Errol. David, please come in from Adolescent and Youth Constituency.
Thank you so much, Helen, and thank you very much, Anne, for the background presentation. I think that particularly I was very happy to see that we have included climate change or environment or planetary health in the advocacy goals for PMNCH. I do think that a great entry point for PMNCH is focusing on adolescent health and well-being as an entry point. However, I do think that there's value also in exploring how climate change had links with SRHR and also with maternal newborn child health. During COP, which recently took place, there were also like amazing work presented by UNFPA, for example, on SRHR and climate change, and also there are other partners who are doing work on maternal health and climate change as well, particularly on the impact of access to services for these populations. So I just wanted to mention that I think that climate change is something that we should take into consideration more, and not only from the well-being for adolescent side, but also from the broader focuses of the partnership right now, which are MNCH and also SRHR. But I'm very happy to see that we're including that, considering how urgent it is to address climate change right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Can I bring Bento back in from Liberia? Bento, do you have connectivity? Not seeing
yeah, whilst
that.
we help her, maybe we could just go on to the next.
Yes, I will. I'll go on to Susan. Susan Clapham.
Thank you. I'm chair of the Donors and Foundations, and very happy to say that all the issues that we raise as a constituency are reflected in the 4 advocacy goal areas that Anne has presented. So I just want to raise 3 sort of focus areas, if I may, that we really did focus on as a group. The first one echoes exactly what David was saying, which was, as well as us focusing on the needs of adolescents' health and well-being, but actually getting behind what matters to them, where there's a head of steam, what they're engaged in, and that is on climate mitigation, adaptation. You know, adolescents behind the commitments made at COP and really taking a leadership role in that way. So we felt that that's a role that we should get behind. My second point was on equity. Obviously, that runs through the 4 advocacy goals. We talked a lot about not just building back better, but building back fairer and keeping fairer in our dialogue about building back and being very intentional about that. And my third area was, and 2 others have already said this, board members have already said this, we felt that that we should advocate for a rollout of midwifery, not just in the numbers, but also in the quality, and that midwifery care should be respectful. So those were 3 sort of particular issues that we spent time talking about. They are captured in those 4 areas, but I thought just to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Let's see if Bento is there again. Bento, if you got access to a mic? Not here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So from our side, just to say that the library is very happy to be really part of this call to action, because the good thing about this is the call to action is in line with the government priorities. And the acts for Liberia, the commitment is around acts 1, 2, 6, and 7. And so this aligns very much with our priorities in the work that we are doing around adolescent, women, children, and children health. If I may go into quickly what, because of time,
what Liberia, from the time Liberia committed to this call for action, what have been engagements that have been going on to date. Right after we did that commitment, we did our the stakeholder engagement on that. The government then started engaging the parliament, the civil society, and all of that. And to date, the engaging in parliament has helped us so much, especially the Committee on Health and Finance. They are now championing for us at the House of Parliament to ensure that this commitment is realized, because it is actually dear to us. Like I said from the very beginning, as issues around adolescent health is key because we have a very young population. PMNCH are also, since our commitment, been in the applying efforts because PMNCH supported one of its partners, Phil, with some catalytic funding, and that has buttressed our work with the parliament, and they have been engaging in parliament, and because of that, the Committee on Health is actually championing to make sure that the funding that is required is also being provided. We've also had the opportunity, because we are looking at quality services for women, children, and adolescent health. We were able to train about 1,500 health workers, and especially on respectful care and friendly care for adolescent women and children. We know that the respectful care, especially as it relates to maternal respectful care, is an issue. I don't think it's peculiar to Liberia, but cognizant of that, we are applying a lot of efforts around it. And adolescent, making sure that no prejudice is removed and they have quality services. For now, in our commitment, we talk about providing critical life-saving equipment. So over the time, for all of the effort, we have been able to provide over 100 life-saving equipment, including ultrasound, the O2 concentrator and canisters, and even solar blood bank. And this solar blood bank, because emergency obstetric care is an issue here, because if you look at the statistics, the maternal deaths per 100,000 Liberia is just more than acceptable. And so we are bringing in some of these issues. And so right now, the chair on health in the House of Parliament is working with all the key stakeholder and development partner to ensure that we get the kind of support that we need to actually move on. So as the situation evolves with the COVID-19, our proposed strategy for advocacy priority can be timely to actually generate further partner support and align their resources and investment with the national implementation efforts that will help us actually to realize the commitment we've made for our children. We are also engaging the community themselves. There are several barriers as it relates to Africa, which Liberia finds itself. There are several barriers to from the community health, for the community portion, ranging from traditional to cultural to relations and everything. So we've heavily partnered with the community as well, and so that they see need to actually support the adolescent to achieve life, and not only that, but also to thrive and survive. So we want to say thanks to the PMNCH for this call. Although these were things we were doing, but this call to action actually make us to put in the lifeline these areas that we need to work on. So just wanted to say this, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those constructive suggestions. I'll come next to Flavia.
Thank you very much, Anne, and the colleagues of the Advocacy Committee. That was fantastic to see how you were able to harness the input from the group and present some consensus as the comments are coming, really are facilitating our discussion. I have two main points. Number one, there is no doubt that we need to continue focus the call to action on COVID, given the situation with COVID, but also in my mind, this is very linked with point number 4. If there is one lesson that we learned from the Ebola epidemic was that there was a clear and immediate impact on maternal mortality and child mortality in the countries most affected by it. So the data that even today Mexico shared with us and the data that are being published already all indicate that this is, we are looking to a future where we will see the impact of COVID on those unfortunate deaths. And capitalizing on the new reports, I think, Anne, will be fantastic, and it will be a fantastic role also for PMNCH to bring these two streams together. My second point is I also was very happy to see that there was a reference to Planetary Health, but I wonder whether we could not try to think, maybe not for 2022, but for the further advocacy goals of PMNCH, that this becomes like a stream of work similar to embedding women and children health in UHC and PHC. The way, what we are seeing now is that the impact of climate change, for example, on all the dimension of adolescents' well-being, from health and nutrition to resilience to mental health. So as we work on this knowledge and evidence and we make it emerge, then we capitalize on the incredible voice that we have of young actors, and we have seen that in the climate negotiation, those voices have been maybe the most powerful and the most disruptive to date. And then we also capitalize on what we have as citizens in PMNCH and the healthcare professional. At this COP, you know, the commitments by the healthcare professionals to decarbonizing the health sector is a great example of how we as PMNCH can contribute to moving the opinion and the opinion makers, building on the reputation that we have. So those are my comments, and I really look forward to engaging in translating these priorities into the action and activities for 2022. Over.
Thanks very much, Flavia. Let's bring in Government of India. Is it Vikas?
Thank you, Helen, and thanks, Anne, for the rich presentation and the insightful contributions from the board members. The 5 strategic priorities that have been recommended resonate with our own national priorities and focus in India. These priorities, in a way, are universal, and therefore it's very important to strategically think about what is the PMNCH's added value in each of these proposed priority areas. PMNCH's call to action on COVID-19 remains relevant and urgent as we continue to respond to the new challenges posed by the still evolving pandemic. I'm going to put my PECC hat on for a moment. At the PECC meeting, we agreed that as the nature of these challenges evolves, we might have to articulate additional asks. I think, for example, it will be beneficial to explicitly advocate for a multi-sectoral PHC influenced approach to deliver the SRMNCAH services and thereby create a more just and equitable response and recovery process. We have seen that in close collaboration with the Government of India, social enterprises and multi-stakeholder initiatives are able to innovatively and effectively overcome the last mile distribution hurdles and reach hard to reach populations with preventive and curative services and information. This we've experienced in our recent COVID-19 vaccination drive also, and where we saw that even in areas where we do not have the usual connectivity, areas which are usually cut off from the mainland due to harsh weather conditions, even there we were able to reach near 100% coverage in such areas. So therefore, there is value in country experience in reaching out to the last mile. We have the largest cohort of adolescent population in the country, in the world.
People, Lily.
So PMNCH added value in advocating for frontier issues such as adolescent health and well-being and mental health of young people in the crisis, including on a rights-based approach to adolescent health. We therefore appreciate that the call to action for adolescents has been included as a strategic priority. India has the largest adolescent population in the world, and we take the issue of investing in adolescent well-being very seriously as a lever for accelerating national growth. It is wise that PMNCH is supporting the development of an investment case for adolescent well-being in the form of the Global Investment Framework for WCAH and well-being. It would also be beneficial to link the call to action on COVID-19 and the call to action for adolescents more explicitly. I believe this can encourage stronger alignment in the efforts of the in-country partners. I'm sure that with our collective wisdom, we should be able to articulate the strategic priorities to guide the partnership efforts going forward. Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Back to you.
Thank you very much. And can I just note that some of our colleagues are also putting their substantive comments into the chat. Quite a long one from Lisa, who has had to go to catch a train. Also others coming in, Marlene, Caroline from private sector. So some points and some good supportive comments, and others also amplifying what they have to say. So please pay attention to the chat boxes as well. Martin, please come in.
Thank you very much again, Helen. I just want to make a couple of points. One, let me salute the intervention from Bento about the robust partnership that has been forged between the government and the Parliament of Liberia. I believe that this is the type of partnership and alliance that is very useful in mobilizing political support, which translates into concrete action on the ground. And I would like to encourage Bento to be in touch with us, because I would like to share this experience with other parliaments, especially in Africa. It's good practice that we need to share. And we can see how we can then be building an alliance of parliaments in Africa, for instance, with Uganda, Sierra Leone, and Mali, where maternal, newborn, and child health is very, very present in Parliament. Then I would also like to lend my support to the priority areas that have been identified for next year. And if I may be allowed, I would like to suggest more prominence to action in the area of violence against women in our call to action. I think we are all agreed that during the pandemic period, we have witnessed an upsurge in violence against women. It is something that I think that we should focus more on going forward. And just last week, and Helga, thank you for coming to our assembly in Madrid. We were launching this study on violence or sexism against women in parliaments. I think that we should be trying, if we're not spreading ourselves thin, be giving some thought to how we can protect those who are supposed to be protecting the others. I mean, politicians and parliamentarians. And we saw from that study that violence against women politicians is very rife, not only in Africa, but across the board. So it is something that we need maybe to focus on as we move forward, just as we need not to forget the work that we have been doing on fighting female genital mutilation in Africa in particular. I also would like to take up that point about leveraging the power of global platforms that exist. And I heard what Aneka was saying. I thought that she would mention the high-level commission on Nairobi, which issued its first global report a couple of weeks ago. I think that we should be looking at how we can forge alliances with these platforms that already exist and which have their own champions, high-level champions, like this Nairobi High-Level Commission, but you also have the Sun Movement lead group with global leaders. In recent months, I have had the pleasure of working with the Grand Duchess of Luxembourg, who is very engaged on issues of sexual violence against women in conflict. It is something that we need to tap into as we want to strengthen our advocacy function. So I thought I should just put that on the table. I know that we will be discussing the how, and I would just like to say that as we move forward, we should always bear in mind that the partnership that we are forging at the global level should also be manifested at the national level. When you approach Parliament at the national level, I don't think that individual partners should be approaching them separately. There should be some sort of coherent, cohesive approach to those political leaders that are in a position to make a difference. So partnership at the global level, but also at the national level, so that we have a unifying message that is going to the political leaders. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Martin. Thiago, please come in.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Anne, for the presentation. Yeah, we had a discussion in our constituency, the Global Financing Mechanisms one, and yeah, we think that this is a good set of priorities. Just wanted to offer 3 comments that we discussed. So the first one is we believe it's important to build on all the context that is surrounding us, and there's a lot of attention that is going to the pandemic. So it's good that we can build on that to bring attention to the issues that we consider priority. So it's strategic to have the COVID call to action on the top of the list there. The second point, I think Aneka mentioned that these priorities are all intertwined. And I also wanted to add that we should ensure there's a balance in the way that we treat them. So we don't prioritize one over the other, but all of them receive the same level of work and attention. And my third point is, yeah, we're very happy to see the work stream on equity. As you've heard before from Anuradha, from myself, Gavi is very committed to the equity agenda, and we really want to also to offer support to that stream of work, and we look forward to working with everyone on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Jean Connery, FIGO President, please come in.
Fine. I want to commend Ann Stars and the advocacy group for what is a very considered and thorough summary and evaluation. On behalf of FIGO, we know that OBGYNs are key leaders here, and we view our work as collaborative efforts to improve maternal, newborn, and children's health, or as we like to say, care across the lifespan. So I agree very much with what Flavia said, that there's been a serious impact on maternal mortality, morbidity and mortality, and access to sexual and reproductive health care with COVID. So keeping that as a background or a backdrop for our discussions. I think there are 4 pillars that we always talk about. And what we saw here was the research, implementation, and interpretation from the Knowledge and Evidence Group. Really clear examples of the research that says the direction we can go. Education is where we need to be able to take a lot of our countries, but the advocacy and capacity building are really critical for all levels of healthcare practitioners. So I want to thank Dr. Hansen and the Knowledge and Evidence Group, because we agree very strongly on the commitment to preterm birth, low birth weight, preventable maternal deaths, and stillbirths. And I want to thank Martin Chungong for really bringing out the impact of violence against women in all respects. We've certainly seen that with COVID, but the violence that we've seen with women in areas of conflict. So bringing out maternal deaths, but also women because they're the moms. You know, we see what's happening, the impact on their families. We screen for pregnancy for diabetes and hypertension, yet violence is more common than those. So making sure that we're addressing that for all women is absolutely critical. And then for me, I'm always a strong voice for obstetric bundles and implementation, because the bundles have been shown to bring about changes in maternal morbidity and mortality. And then finally, being a very strong environmental advocate, I believe planetary health is absolutely essential. And we can bring in both climate change and environmental degradation, whether we're talking about the increase in stillbirths or increase in low birth weight infants, the increase in preterm delivery. All of those are directly related to planetary health. Endocrine disruptors are a strong aspect of that. So I think you can tie that message in to every topic that we're talking about. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anne Shu, please come in.
Thank you, Helen. And I feel one thing that's missing in the COVID-19 call to action is the issue about schools. And the school closures is particularly the one issue that has had so much impact on the lives of children and adolescents. And that links it up also very nicely to the third agenda on increased focus on adolescent well-being. I think that's one major issue that we have learned from this pandemic. Of course, the mitigation of essential services or loss of disruption of essential services as part of the COVID-19 call to action, I think, is still very important. And as Annika said, most of these link up actually one to the other. So, but I think the main focus should be indeed on that protection of essential services. So looking at the adolescent well-being, I think we completely support the focus on the BMJ Adolescent Well-Being series, as well as the Global Forum for Adolescents and the call to action for the Adolescents campaign, or call to action for adolescents. And on the ending preventable maternal and newborn deaths and stillbirths, we also support the production of and the work to be undertaken on the Born Too Soon agenda. So those are just some of my reflections. Thank you.
Thanks, Anshu. Naledi from Adolescent Youth Constituency.
Thank you, Helen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Anne, for the wonderful presentation. I'd like to mention that I'm happy that mental health has been mentioned as part of the recommended goals for 2022. When we sat down as the adolescents and youth constituents, we actually mentioned mental health as an area that we'd like to advocate for in the year 2022. And I feel like this is particularly relevant given the current fourth wave of COVID, and given the impact that COVID-19 has had on adolescent mental health in previous waves. But I also feel that there is need to strengthen evidence on this topic, on this issue of mental health through research. Because when we look at low and middle income countries, like the country I come from, Zimbabwe, there hasn't been much effort to gather data on adolescent mental health. So I feel that there is need that we focus on research so that we strengthen our advocacy efforts. And I also feel that there is need to really engage our governments, because this issue has been a neglected issue. It has worsened, obviously, due to COVID, but little work has been done to develop policies and to develop programs that address adolescent mental health. So I feel this is really a key priority for us as the adolescent and youth constituency for 2022. Thank you.
Helen, you're on mute.
Okay, it's the story of the year, isn't it? Also want to note in the box that David Embargo has made the point about not wanting a dilution of SRHR in the adolescent pillar, and that has been given some support from Joy Pumafi, who's been able to join us. So I think that did bring us to the end of inputs and comments. And what I thought it would be useful to do now is to bring Anne back in to perhaps comment on what she's picked up as main themes coming through and feedback, and I'll also invite Hilga. And then I would suggest that we ask the Secretariat to support Anne overnight in coming back with a decision for us, because there's been important comments which would probably want to be incorporated before we take a decision. So Anne, the floor is back to you.
Great. Thank you, Helen, and thanks so much to everybody for the strong, really strong and clear engagement, both in terms of oral comments, but also in the chat function. I will say that is something I know that having to meet virtually has many downsides, but I have found in this and in other meetings that being able to have the sort of two fronts for conversation, both the written comments in the chats and the actual oral comments, it's really helpful to see how those reinforce each other and complement each other. And so I think, as Annika just noted, that making sure that we preserve the chat is an important part. So I've been taking notes on everything that everybody has said. I don't want to I don't want to concern, so I won't reflect everything in my summary, but just a few highlights. I heard overall clearly a strong endorsement for the four focus recommendations in terms of the advocacy goals that were presented. So thanks to everybody who has endorsed that. I've also heard some nuances to some of those recommendations in terms of particular areas of focus and some suggestions around sort of tweaking those. I think I heard pretty strongly we had identified 1, 2, and 3 as the top priorities from the PMNCH call to action. I'm also hearing from many people a call for focus on recommendation 7 as well, on the violence against the gender-based violence against women, children, and adolescents. So we'll sort of check with the secretary, but I'm seeing some nods now from faces on my screen. So I think that's one potential outcome. I've also heard, I mean, this is embedded within or implicitly embedded in the call to action 3, the quality on quality care, and I heard a strong focus on that, including a focus on the health workforce and including midwifery care. So that came through strongly as well. I think one thing that wasn't said explicitly, it was implied a little bit in what Naledi said. She was focusing specifically on the need for more evidence on impact of COVID on mental health and well-being. I actually have been thinking that one potential activity that PMNCH might be well placed to do would be to work with, in particular, our focus geographies, but to really compile what is the evidence on the impact of COVID across, in fact, the WCAH continuum. I know from where I sit at the Gates Foundation that we really struggle to try and distill what has been. We know that COVID has had an impact on disrupting access to care. And Carla, your data from Mexico was very striking and very concerning. I think in some contexts, we have seen people, at least in family planning, in the access to contraception, we have seen people shifting from using government or public health services to going to private drug shops and pharmacies, at least for some care. But we know that that there have been serious disruptions. So I think having PMNCH being able to compile the solid research and evidence on this and provide it in a focused way through our website platform would be, I think, an important contribution. I've I've heard, I think in terms of, and I responded to some of the comments in the chat function. I think I agree that what we're hearing from countries around the engagement with champions and in particular with parliamentarians and the importance of that country voice and ensuring that the work that we do at the global and also at the regional level, ensuring that we align with and support the work of key members of PMNCH and the key constituencies as we engage with countries and make sure that our work is supporting and reinforcing the advocacy agenda at the country level is critical. I forgot to mention in the opening presentation that in addition to the constituency survey, that the Secretariat is going to be holding a series of in-depth interviews with advocacy groups in, I believe it's 5 countries, if that's correct, to help flesh out some of this, this discussion around how can PMNCH best support and reinforce and align with the advocacy work and the advocacy needs at the country level. So I think that will be happening over the next couple of weeks and will feed into the work planning retreat that we'll be holding in February. So I think those are some of the key comments. As I said, this is not comprehensive, but I've captured a lot of this in notes and we'll work with the Secretariat over the next day or two to refine and the presentation, the slides that we've shared with you. But I think this has been a fantastic discussion. And then of course we will also have more tomorrow when we get to the how, when we dive into the how. Yes. So thanks very much. Hope that's helpful.
Thanks very much, Anne. I see Bento from Liberia has her hand up. Bento, do you want to come back in here? I think we had some.
Thank you so much.
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I just wanted to say thanks to you people, and the minister is here, and she just wanted to say a word to you people. So she just got back.
Good afternoon to all. I just wanted to apologize for not being able to attend the meeting. I had an urgent call just as I sat to the meeting. But what Madam Tuhunge has said is what will be going by as Liberia. We committed to all of the new actions, and we will be on board to make sure that things improve along the line of PMNCH, and we want to make sure that we continue to support and advocate as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Helga, would you like to come back in at this point?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's very encouraging to hear that the 7 asks and the call for actions are highly felt to be relevant. And I agree with Anne that in addition to 1, 2, and 3, that we've heard 7 and 4. And 4 is about the training, equal and fair pay and working conditions of our healthcare workers. We have been critical in the pandemic and in the recovery, and also the building forward better than. So I think also try to capture that mental health within one of this, as Anne has said, is critical, as well as then the planetary as the consequences for women, children, and adolescent. And I think that is the way that PMNCH should be actually then advocating on general. There are some hows here that came, and I think those we should take with us for the discussion tomorrow, and rather than just focus on our slides with Anne. And thank you, Anne, for your leadership, and also for SAC and PEC's leadership in this, as well as the working groups, because we've got substantial inputs in a way that we've never done actually before in PMNCH. So the governance reform is proving to be very actually participatory and great, and that's thanks to Flavia and her team. So I think then we will meet also tomorrow Helen, with some slides building on Anne's presentation, which is already summary, and then tweaking with what we heard from what the board members have said here. And then maybe Anne can present that tomorrow morning. Or,
Yes,
yeah, her time tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Very early.
Your time.
Well, thank you, Helga and Anne. And I think rather than attempt to sort of amend on the spot based on the many good contributions, take the time overnight and come back with the new overheads, because we are to take a decision on this, on the strategic priorities. So we'll be better informed when we've slept on it and been able to come back and see it in writing before us. So I think, as Helga says, it has been a good meeting with a lot of very, very strategic comments coming back on, well-prepared presentations, which is what we would have hoped would come from the governance reform. And I think that this way of structuring the agenda has been very useful. So we can adjourn until tomorrow, when we have day 2 of our agenda. And we are focusing tomorrow on the how. So how are we going to implement the ideas that we're agreeing on? So just ask everybody to come well prepared for another good 2.5-hour session. And I really thank you all for your succinct and clear and constructive proposals and recommendations in the discussions that we've had today. Helga, any last logistical point that you would like to convey?
So just one easy one. Thank you, Helen, to you. And I think we have then put the picture on the web, on the chat box, and please feel free to use it in the webinar, in the social media for this board meeting. And then we look forward to see everyone tomorrow.
Yes, we just, the technologically challenged, we'll have to work out how to capture the photo now, but a way will be found. Is there any advice on that?
We can put it on our board WhatsApp. That'll be easier to use.
That would be good, because a right click isn't enabling me to save it at the moment. So, yeah.
Helen, when you open it on the top bar that shows, there is a little arrow pointing down, which means download.
Yes.
Download, and it will end up in your computer.
Okay, living in hope. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. There was good advice from Annika, and I have now captured it. Thank you. Right. See you all online tomorrow.